One of the most common tasks to perform with compositing is to add motion blur to animated 3D objects. And even though we can do this directly in our render from either Cycles or Eevee, once you render, you lose the ability to tweak it. It's what we call baked in, meaning you can't remove it or change it. In most cases, rendering 3D with motion blur adds significant render time as well. By adding it in compositing, it's adjustable and fast to render. The only drawback is that real 3D motion blur is a bit more accurate, but the differences are pretty minimal. We're using a different scene in this motion blur lesson. Unfortunately, a guitar leaning against an amp doesn't move that much, so it's not very useful here. So instead I've got this jet flyby scene which uses a live action plate and a jet image. To add post-process motion blur, we need to activate a couple passes we haven't used yet. Back in the View Layer tab, turn on both the Z and the Vector passes. The Z pass will give us depth information about the scene, and the Vector pass will give us data whenever any objects move. In the compositor, you'll now see new sockets have been added to the render node: Depth, which is the Z pass, and Vector. Go ahead and press the Render Active Scene button to update the render layer node. You can see I've already got a node tree going on for this shot, but it still needs that motion blur. Press Shift A in the Filter category under Blur and bring in a Vector Blur node. Drop it in line right after the color correction nodes and before the alpha over node. You can see this node has a couple open sockets: a speed socket, which is the vector, and a Z socket, which is the depth. Plug those both into their respective sockets. And there we go, beautifully calculated motion blur. In the Vector Blur node, we do have a couple options we can adjust though. Samples controls the smoothness of the blur, so the higher it is, the smoother it is, but the longer it takes to calculate. Setting it to something low like 4 calculates very fast, but you can see there's some dithering or segmenting or something happening. The default of 32 is great, but we could be fine using something like 16 for this scene. The blur value is equivalent to shutter speed, just like in the render settings if you were to actually render the motion blur from 3D. Turning it down gives us less motion blur, while making it higher gives us more. The closer you get to 1, the more likely you'll get some unwanted artifacts. And you really wouldn't want to use a blur value of 1 anyway. That'd be like the shutter on your camera never closing. So that's how easy it is to add motion blur, and it's entirely up to you what would work best for your scene, to add it in compositing or to just render it into the 3D.